Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. Tuesday means People's Poll Day. James, how are we doing?
I'm okay, thank you, Suj. And yourself?
Yeah, can't complain, can't complain. Today, this week's vote, which led to today's topic, was actually pretty close. In the early stages, everyone was between 30 and 35%. But we did have a winner. Do you want to tell everybody what the options were and who won? Or what won?
He didn't win anymore, did he?
No pun intended. That was completely unintentional comedy genius.
The thing is, you say it was unintentional. I could see that you were going to do it.
Yeah.
Right. So the three options were Premier League and Fantasy Premier League rule changes for the new season. Tom Cantle's Who Got the Assist, Talisman, Fury. Our patrons are currently voting on those two options now for which one we're going to record for them tomorrow. The winner of your vote, and there were a lot of votes on this, more than there's commonly actually, was the winner of 2019-2020 Fantasy Premier League being stripped of the title. This is week-old news, but we weren't about last week to give or pass comment or anything. And I think had we been podding, it's not something we would have avoided. And that's why I think people have voted for us to speak about it, because we'll probably speak about it in a slightly different way to some others would.
Indeed, yeah, James. So I obviously saw the news and didn't have any context on what was going on whatsoever with it. Other than he'd been stripped of the title, and then there was a lot more speculation and what have you. And we know in the end that the reason that the title was stripped was because of racist comments made in a private Facebook chat with friends. And I give the air quotes there because obviously he doesn't know these people necessarily. And the Premier League have acted fairly swiftly and in line with everything else that they've been doing with Black Lives Matter and the post-lockdown peaceful protests and stuff that they allow the players to do and what have you. Yeah.
Is there any doubt in your mind that FPL made the right decision here?
I'll be honest with you. I'm surprised at the decision they made a little bit. More often than not, when you look at what the Premier League, look at what they've done with the Saudi Arabian takeover of Newcastle United. Said nothing. They're generally radio silence, right? And they avoid controversial stuff necessarily. So it wouldn't have surprised me had they said, not our jurisdiction to get involved with this. It's nothing to do. It's not happened on the FPL platform. So I'm surprised that they did something, but they've done the right thing, I guess. Yeah.
I don't think it's in question for a second, is it?
No, they've done, but I'm surprised. So take, for example, the comparison I draw is the likes of Twitter and Facebook and what have you. When other politically, for example, they won't censor Donald Trump or stop him lying or making incendiary remarks and all Facebook, because they'll take the stance that freedom of speech is not our place to say what can and can't be said. And there's a lot of homophobic, racist, sexist stuff that exists on those platforms as well. Now, in the context of slightly different contexts, but these platforms take the view that, look, freedom of speech, not our place to be the policeman of the world on what people say and don't say. And part of me expected the Premier League to take that same approach of, if it happens
just ignore it
within the Premier League, within our platform, sure. If it's outside of our platform, then it's nothing to do with us. Now, so many of our show has the letters FPL in the title. And so many FPL accounts on Twitter, etc., are using FPL. So the second that you use those three letters, you're instantly associating yourself with the game. And so I feel like they then suddenly do have a little bit of jurisdiction in controlling their brand. But it's also a can of worms. It's a can of worms on... there's plenty of people that have made comments and remarks that would disqualify them from winning.
Yes.
A lot. So I see
question.
that side of it as well. So it's interesting. I think ultimately there was a lot said on Twitter. There was one remark that stood out for me as the most common sense, logical um, thing, which was Rambo on the FPL. He said, "If you stop being racist in private, people will stop being racist in public." Simple. And that's ultimately summed it up. And I understand you can do and say, look, it was behind closed doors, it was in a private chat or whatever. But if you stop being racist in private, people will stop being racist in public. And that ultimately is why, yes, it's the right thing to do. And it breached their terms of service, right? I didn't read, I'll be honest with you, I haven't read the rules to see which specific rule it has breached, but regardless.
I don't think there necessarily is one that it physically broke in terms of rule. I mean, you're not going to find it in the rules. Don't be racist. Don't be abusive or anything. I don't think any of that's in the rules. If it is, then I'll be honest. I ain't fucking read through it. I don't really care that much about the rules, as I'll prove next year, probably. Stick your cash prize mini leagues. But I think that the issue is obviously, if he'd won, and I'm not going to mention the guy by name or his social media accounts or anything like that, A, because he doesn't deserve the publicity, B, I don't need people going directly to him any further off the back of this, because I think most people have said enough in terms of directing their feelings towards it. If he'd won, essentially becomes a brand ambassador for them. I know what you're saying in terms of people say certain things on Twitter. It's not for them to police, etc. But if he won, that would have been a really interesting interview at the end of the season. How did you win FPL, mate? Does anybody want to talk about this? Because that then would have brought some bad attention to FPL. Now, the other flip side of this is that obviously if FPL hadn't done anything, nobody would have ever known anything, is worth saying.
Yes.
Other than his so-called Facebook friends mates, who obviously, A, shouldn't be his mates for the way that they're speaking, and B, obviously ain't his mates because they've grassed him up. So I think he needs to get some new mates. But there is that little point to it that actually if FPL hadn't said anything in the first place and he just got the trophy, none of us would be sitting here any the wiser right now, right? None of us would know. So actually, what I really like about this is the fact that it wasn't like they were pressured into a situation to then make a decision because it was all over social media or something. When FPL made the announcement, looking back through tweets, it looks like people didn't know what was going on or what the reasoning was, and they didn't say. Therefore, they've spoke up. The one thing that's borderline where I'm not sure if I'm happy or unhappy about it is they didn't specifically say themselves. It's kind of come out afterwards. They just said breach of terms and conditions. I get it. It's a balancing act because you don't want the pain directed at one person to say, look, this guy was racist and put it out in public, and then have people going attacking him. So I get the difficulty with that, but they've made a decision which part of the problem with this and society, etc., is turning the blind eye.
Correct.
They didn't, right? And I think that's a good thing. I'd like to get some of these people in. I'd like to get some of these people in at UEFA. That would be good. We might get some proper jurisdiction and stuff.
There is a sea change now in the way that brands and businesses feel comfortable putting out these kind of messages. It started obviously with the BLM protests and what have you this year were a bit of a sea change, I think, in general opinion on what can and can't be said. So there was the Instagram where everybody put a black square on their Instagram profile, and the majority of major brands did it and felt comfortable doing it. Now you talk about sports. If you talk about America, for example, the Confederate statues and the Confederate flag has been quite a talking point and contentious issue. But it stands for slavery and what have you. NASCAR, which is a real American sport, have said they're not going to be allowing the Confederate flag and anything to do with Confederacy at their races. That's a bold statement to make. NFL, NBA, all of these sports are making stances against this stuff now and feeling comfortable to go out and say, we're happy to, what is essentially a political opinion, voice it. And so, yeah, I think you're right. People feel comfortable saying, fuck this shit, not putting up with it. And that's a good thing for sure.
Well, where we need to get to next is that it never becomes even a political opinion. It just becomes a norm, right? Because it shouldn't have to It shouldn't have to be that way. Shouldn't have to have people going and protesting, be it in the UK, in America, or whomever. I think what really made people angry was obviously your man made a YouTube video to explain what happened, but didn't actually really explain what happened, and showed a serious lack of remorse for what had happened. I mean, he's probably quite happy still sitting there with his fan team, £50,000 reward. Yeah, that's why I won't be playing fan team this year, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And
Did you play last year? No.
Nah.
So,
I mean, he's still sitting there, and obviously he's probably, disappointed he's lost his VIP prizes and his fucking stress ball. But he's still getting paid £50,000 from someone else for a different game. So probably inside he's not that bothered. The fact, I actually think he's, having watched the video and looked at some of the tweets, I mean, every time he tweets, he just makes something worse. So it's just like, put the phone down, mate. But I think in his head, he is remorseful. He doesn't understand. He thinks that it's okay. He keeps saying, it was something that was private between friends and that. And it's exactly going back to what you said, that Rambo said. It's like, if you want to get it out of society, just literally go zero tolerance now and say, it's even up to us to say, if we hear it from a friend and say, I'm not comfortable with that anymore. Whereas I think like the line has always been, and I've seen people do this, I left this group chat because someone said something or whatever. Yeah, but did you say something about it?
Yeah.
That's where we need to change to the next level now, is to actually like approach people and say, look, this isn't acceptable. You might think that's funny. I don't.
Yeah.
And move on to a different culture, because actually, to refer it back to football and sport, what the Premier League's done over the last few months has been good, right? They've maintained solidity all the way through it. And I know there's probably a few people thinking by sort of match day 36, are they going to kneel again? Well, actually, yeah, until people get the fucking message, I don't mind if they kneel every week forever, to be honest, until we get to a point where, and listen, you'll never eradicate it from everybody, but part of the problem to refer back to, and people are going to make the link with the fact that the guy's from the same place where England nearly had a match abandoned 9 months ago. Well, we spoke about it then, after England won that game, was like, these people need educating. You don't actually understand that what they're saying is wrong. They think it's normal. It's our culture. It's between us. No, integrate with the rest of the world a little bit. Just don't understand. I don't think they even think they're causing offense when they say, I wouldn't say it to a black person's face. I believe that. They think in their culture to speak like that is okay. It's not. Maybe, I don't know, Suj, because we live in a diverse country where even you and I are from different ethnicities. It's different. I don't know.
Yeah, it's purely down to education, and then understanding what is and isn't acceptable and what is and isn't offensive. You don't need to be abusive directly to someone to be offensive. People can be offended in lots of different ways. So I think the education part plays a massive part. And I think that I'm impressed with what's happened here from the Premier League and what have you.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, there's differences between offence and offence, right? If someone says, James, your podcast is shit, then all right, fair enough. That's your opinion. If someone
that's not an opinion, that's a fact.
James. No, but it's quite right. But no, but if someone then makes a comment and says, the Asian guy on the podcast, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
Right. That's a different thing, right? So that's, if I put myself out there to speak, if people don't like this podcast or think it's nonsense, it's fine. Like, switch off or abuse it or whatever. I don't really care. It's when it becomes personal towards race, etc. Now we've got to get completely away from this, and I'm in full support of the complete zero tolerance on this. I've said before that, like, I've been at football matches when I was in younger years, when I was a teenager and stuff, and sung things that have been regretful. Yeah, because I didn't understand better. You're part of a group, 2,000-3,000 people singing the same thing. You just join in. Now I wouldn't. I made a conscious decision a year ago not to use the Y word anymore, and I haven't used it anymore, because if it offends one person, and I realize it probably be one person out of 50,000, is one person too many as far as I'm concerned. That's the stance that I've made. So it's almost, even now, I feel like I'm still educating myself. I'm not perfect. I can't pretend that I understand how black people feel, etc. But I'm trying to make my own effort as well, and understand more about how people feel. So, but I'd sang silly songs 20 years ago because I was uneducated.
Yeah.
That for me, that's the main bottom line. If I'm in that same position now, I'm not going to do anything. Now I can't tell 2,000 people to shut up, but I can make my own stance. And I think there are more and more people, even into that, even being in a away end at a football ground where there's certain songs you think this is inappropriate. I'm not joining in anymore. And there's more and more of that happening. I mean, that's not a race thing necessarily. I've said this before. I've never heard a racist remark inside a football ground. But it's still going on, isn't it? As a minority, as a bigger picture conversation.
Yeah. But yeah, it was quite surprising to see last week when we were on break that this had happened and everybody's rank had gone up by one, maybe. Probably not even, because quite a few people on the same point stayed on the same rank. But ultimately it was the right thing, and we're glad the Premier League took that stance, and let's hope we see more of it in more football related arenas, environments, whatever it may be.
We could obviously offer our congratulations to Joshua Ball, the new winner. I love looking through his Twitter timeline that he doesn't tweet about FPL at all, basically. It's just some really intelligent guy from Oxford who's won it, right? It's brilliant. I mean, knows how to play the game, clearly. But how would you feel if you were, I think, like, wrong question, because I think we can answer it. If you'd won it and this happened to you, obviously you wouldn't be in that position. But all right, let's say different conversation. You or I won FPL next year. Stop laughing at the back, kids. And we were stripped of it because we had a second team that was a differential team. How would you feel about
that? Really disappointed. And I would feel that was unfair. The reason, I suppose, it would sting because as critical as we might be from time to time, it's a love of the game that forces us to create content, pushes us to create content. And we want more people to play FPL. I would rather there were 15 million people around the world playing than 7.5.
Oh, it's fucking hard enough as it is, Suj.
Yeah, I know, but more listeners, James. We need listeners. Okay. The more people that play the game, the wider the reach, the better. And what we do is designed to help promote the game and the people that are playing to be more engaged with the game. And then on something like, you've got a differential team that might finish like 2 million overall.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Would be really, really disappointing. At that point, I would be like, hang on, this is real nitpicking here. No, thank you. It would upset me.
If I thought I had a chance of winning it, I'd be deleting that team.
They could still find it, and they still probably would.
Yeah. But it'd be an interesting one. Yeah, we've banned Suj from Planet FPL from winning official FPL because he had a joint differential team with James last year. There's a big difference, I think, between the two cases, and there's a lot of scaremongering going on because of one rule that the Premier League introduced, the FPL introduced last week, was to say, they don't support cash mini leagues, etc. Listen, just don't go shouting about it. Is the advice. Be absolutely fine. Don't take anybody's money in public. The other thing is, perhaps if you don't take people's money in the first place, that's a different argument. Maybe you just want to put a prize out there, money to charity, etc. They're not gonna. It's the same thing, right? One of the things that I think annoyed people last week. I'm not sure why it really annoyed people, but was the idea that clearly this fella wouldn't be the only person out of 7 million people who had made a racist remark over the last 9 months. Yeah, I think unfortunately, we can agree with that. Is he the only one that's been grassed up though? Probably. What's the point of what's the point if you're sitting there at 500,000 and you've got a private chat where someone said a similar thing? Are you going to go to FPL and say, mate, ban this guy, finished 500,000 last year? I think that's the point, isn't it? This isn't a case of FPL trawling through people's social media accounts and finding a racist remark. FPL have had it flagged to them, or the EPL have had it flagged to them, and that's why he's been banned, right? How would you feel if you finish second and suddenly become winner?
It wouldn't feel like a victory, I'll be honest with
Do
you.
you know what? I agree with that 100%.
It wouldn't feel like a victory at
Yeah.
all. It'd feel, yeah, on a technicality, I wouldn't feel like I'd won it. I'd take all the prizes and enjoy them. Don't get me wrong, but I don't feel like I wouldn't be jumping on the podcast saying I won FPL. I just wouldn't feel like I'd be comfortable saying I won it because I didn't feel like I'd
I
won
agree.
it.
And to be fair, Josh, rather than the first couple of tweets, which is completely understandable, he's not milking anything or anything.
No, of course.
So I think, if you was putting yourself out there and suddenly going, it's my new content, I won FPL last year, a bit like, no, actually, mate, you came second, but well done, you're first on the technicality. I don't think I could walk around and say I won it. I'd be like you. I'd take all the prizes. I'd enjoy it. We'd have a laugh about it. But I don't think I'd be walking around saying I won FPL.
No.
That's where there is a little people who are still on the... Some people are trying to relate the fact that the guy won FPL to other things that happens to say, like, I don't know, if you get a player who's racist in a football match, then, he can still win a league title at the end of the season. I mean, it's a different thing, right? Like,
they'll get a ban for 9
punishment.
matches, 10 matches and what have you. Yeah, I think it is quite different.
He's been allowed to play FPL again next season. A lot of people aren't happy about that. But then he's just going to set up he's just going to set up a different email address, isn't he?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that, but it has to go hand in hand with what you came back to, which was the education part of it. If somebody says, right, I'll go, I understand I did wrong and I'll learn and be better, then that's not, I don't have a problem with that. I'd be interested if people get banned from FPL from running cash mini leagues.
Are you frightened about it?
No, I'm not. From our point of view, I'm not, to be honest with you. But I feel like it was a late introduction last week, right? This cash mini leagues thing, and I think it came from FPL seeing how many people were setting up cash mini leagues.
There was a lot of it going on Twitter. A lot.
Yes, and a lot of people were retaining some money for themselves for running the league. But the types of money that we're talking about here were like 50 to 100 quid. I didn't see anyone that was like pocketing £500 or £1,000 from the prize pot. It was 100 quid or so. And when I saw that, I was thinking, you know what? Do you realize how much effort it is to police and run a league and sort out all the codes and if you're doing manager of the month or whatever, for 100 quid? And it's not my place to judge whether people need 100 quid or not, but it's a lot more work than that. Trust me, if you divvy up the hours that you're going to spend on it, it's not minimum wage, it's less. So there weren't many that I looked at and I thought, okay, this is a real big money maker. And so people, I don't think, are necessarily doing it to get rich. But I can see the risk where you have so many mini leagues of people not paying out at the end of the season. That could be a concern.
Oh, there's definitely cases where people have paid money to enter leagues and leagues have gone missing. Not because of FPL, but because someone doesn't want to be paying back out the money, etc. So, look, if you enter a cash mini league, you know the risk, right? It's your money. Would you buy something without seeing it, etc.? Do you trust the person you're working with, etc.? So, I obviously have entered no cash mini leagues this season, to absolutely clarify. What about you?
No, I haven't entered any either.
No.
And I told you we're not doing our customary bet because I'm going to play like a maverick this season. And
that we can do that because that's just between friends. That's not involving anyone else.
Okay, I didn't know
but
that was.
If you log back into FPL, you will find that because you beat me last year, your team has been deleted.
Yeah, I was. That's the asterisk at the end of it.
Listen, it's definitely a fucking asterisk on your win, mate.
Yeah, people have been asking about that. I keep reminding. That's your 3 wildcards asterisk, James.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah,
noted. Yeah.
We had the same game weeks and the same rules. I just got 7 more points. There we go. I'll be interested on everybody's take. Although I know it's a subject that's been talked about quite a lot, and for once, I think it's not one that requires milking anymore because giving attention to a conversation that's had enough, and the right outcome was taken fairly swiftly and dealt with, and we move on, right?
Leave the guy in peace, right? Genuinely, everything that could have been said to him has already been said already. It's up to the guy to seek help to educate himself now, or his so-called friends to all get education, etc. There's nothing you can go and say to this guy now that's not already been said to him. The best thing to do, if you don't want to see it on your timeline, mute, block, and move on.
Correct.
It does amuse me. Just one final thing. It does amuse me when someone wins FPL, how their followership like launches up. It always amuses me. Mind you, this guy's took a fucking hit back as well.
Yeah, true. He has indeed, James. There we go, listeners. That's a little rundown on what we missed last week. I'm sure there's a few other topics that we need to cover off as well. So we'll be touching on all of that. We have more content coming for you this week. Sky Fantasy Football tomorrow. On Thursday, we have James will be streaming a live stream. Ask James. You can jump on and ask him any comments about that. And on Friday, we'll be back at you once the fixtures are announced with a little bit more of a rundown on pre-season tinkering with some actual fixtures that we can tinker with. So depending on when they're released, it may be a little bit later in the day, but you know what? You've got all weekend to listen to that show. So Touchwood Premier League, you know what? Do us a favour, release them in the morning if you don't mind. That would be nice.
They will. They won't be later than Friday lunchtime because they need the whole day of publicity for that. They're not going to be announcing 380 fixtures at 7 p.m. at night, mate. I'm absolutely certain
that 7 p.m. slot is reserved for things like the EFL announcing the Sheffield Wednesday situation.
Oh my God! Yes, isn't it just
failed takeover of Newcastle? All of that stuff that they don't want the publicity for is that graveyard.
That's the 7 p.m. on a Friday. Yes. Yeah. Our offices are closed till Monday.
The fixtures is going to be nice and early. So plenty of content coming at you wherever you're listening to the podcast: iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, etc. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you're on YouTube, it's the subscribe button, notification bell, and anything else you'd like. If you want to hear more content from us, then do subscribe to our Patreon. It's patreon.com/planetfpl. There's lots of extras that you can get, including 5 extra podcasts a week, some mini leagues for patrons only. We have a Slack channel that's very active and a lot of interaction at the moment with people tinkering with their teams, amongst other things as well. Articles from James, so much more that you can get if you need more of a Planet FPL fix. But that's it from us. Stay safe as always, and ciao for now.
Thanks everyone, and especially on this one, be nice to each other. Cue music please, man. Ciao.